that's added to the turret. TOW stands for Tube Launched Optically Tracked Wire Guided. Basically, it's an anti-tank missile, and the Bradley, despite being an infantry fighting vehicle, so mainly a battle bus to transport troops into the action on the battlefield, it was upgunned with the TOW launcher, and I think it carried 2 TOW missiles, anti-tank missiles, very possibly for the first Gulf War, where it was going up against potentially Iraqi T-55, T-72 tanks, as well as, of course, the Abrams main battle tank from the US forces. So the model itself is crisply moulded. As you can see, there's some nice detail there. There's some recessed panel lines for the rear access door, which features a door itself, and the whole panel can fall down and open, so that the troops can debus more quickly, basically. There are a few ejector pin marks. I don't know if you can just see those there, but I believe that bit glues onto there so that it covers them up. So nice design there by Revell. And the usual hydraulic wheel supports there, so that it's sort of sprung loaded as it goes over, hydraulically loaded really, as it goes over uneven ground. So there's the sprue with the main body, okay, and the parts of the turret there. You can model it with the hatch open, only for the I believe that's the commander, but at least it's nice to see that you've got the option of modelling it with at least one of the hatches open. Unfortunately, the rest are sealed. I believe that's the driver's position, and there's the engine compartment, which is actually a raised panel, not a recessed one, but in real life, of course, that is a panel that folds over the top of the engine, so that is correct. Also some things here like some vents, things that's nicely captured detail, and the option to be able to rotate the turret, which is always nice when you're making a model that you can show it in an action pose with the turret moved off center, because let's face it, in reality they don't always have them all lined up straight when they're sort of scanning the terrain, that kind of stuff. So the side armour is included on this sprue, as well as the sort of ammunition storage basket. Some extra armour, which features the sort of grip panels, the non-slip panels, which are quite nice. Maybe a nice wash would go on well with those after painting, make it look more detailed. And I believe these are sort of handles with the side armour that helps take them off for maintenance, probably to get to the running gear. But even some little extra sort of, well, I guess they're sort of handles, aren't they? Means to sort of move things and possibly even hang things on at the side. And the tracks are plastic moulded in the wheels. So unfortunately you don't get the sort of track sag, which occurs in most armoured vehicles. You know, tracks aren't rigid, they sort of fold around the wheels. But most of the top track, which would sag, is covered by the armoured side skirts anyway, so you wouldn't even see that. And then at least you don't have to mess about with rubber tracks, like the old Airfix Scorpion, where you have to use a sort of a hot tool, a hot knife or implement to actually seal the rubber, and it's a bit of a pain to work with. And the individual track links, of course, they go around the sort of curved wheels, the driving wheel and the sort of dead wheel. These tracks go across the flat main wheels, so not bad at all. Nice detail there. You see that if you're close enough, you can just see the sort of bolts and things that the wheels have. Probably quite hard to paint, to be honest, in this scale, but that's always the case with this scale of tank, well, armoured fighting vehicle. So the instruction manual, like I said, definitive. You get the safety instructions, very important, of course, different languages. I believe Revell kits are made in Germany. So you've got things in English and other languages there, and your different sort of symbols in the construction, and your paints, which I believe correspond with the Revell colours. But of course you can get paint guides to if you like the other paints that are available. I personally like the Vallejo Model Air. I find those work very well with an airbrush. They're quite easy to thin. In fact, you don't have to thin them much at all, and they go on very nicely. You also get a nice sprue map, which is a sort of a feature of more modern kits, although I say more modern, probably from the 90s, 2000s. Back in the 70s, you didn't really get a sprue map like this, most of the kits that I can remember. Construction starts with the wheels, running gear, no surprises there. And then you add those to the main bottom of the hull, and then you start construction on the, as I said, the rear door and the extra front armour. An additional armour there. And then the various sort of extra panels and things that go on the main body, the side skirts, armoured skirts on the side. The extra detail around the driver's hatch. And then the turret itself. The M2 A2 Bradley. I think most Bradleys actually feature the Bushmaster cannon, which I think is a 25mm gun, and one of those would ruin your day basically if it fired at you. I've seen film of the Scorpion Raden cannon, which is 27mm, literally going right through a transit van. The shells will go right through it, so you don't really want to mess with these things. And it's designed to provide armoured support, as I said, to the fighting soldiers inside. I think it carries up to 6, as well as the crew. And then the last part involves the TOW missile launcher, anti-tank missile launcher. It shows that you can make some aerials by what we call stretched sprue. You can heat it over a candle. Got to be a little bit careful with a naked flame, of course. Not for kids. But I've found, and one of the Bovington modelers are really ambassadors of the Bovington Tank Museum in Dorset. I'm very lucky. I live nearby. And he said basically you can use a fence brush. You can buy a fence brush in the UK for a couple of pounds, and you've got an almost endless supply of filaments, bristles, and they're the right scale and pretty much size. You might have to cut them, and they also bend, so you don't have to worry about breaking them in transit if you're taking your models to a show. They come clear as well, which means that you can paint them nice and easy to deal with. So thank you for Bovington Tank Museum for that little heads up there. In terms of the paint schemes, you've got the European camouflage, as I mentioned, from the Kosovo conflict, which is sort of black, brown and green. I think that is US standard European camouflage. And then you've got 2 versions from the Operation Desert Storm 1991 Gulf War, with the inverted V, as I've said, and the identification panels. Panel including the decals, because I think it was made out of material, so it's kind of floppy and soft when on the top over the ordnance. And you can model it from the Armoured Cavalry Regiment Desert Storm 1991 or the 3rd Infantry Division Desert Storm February 1991. So all in, I think quite a nice little kit. One of these days I'd like to get around to making it. And I'll also be reviewing the Dragon ones soon. Dragon do a series of Bradleys. And I've got a couple of those, so we'll look at those in what's in the box. Thank you for watching. Like I said, appreciate all the subscribers and people who give us a thumbs up on the channel. And it's seriously, because of you that I've continued this over the last few years. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.